In the vastness of the galaxy, humanity was seen as nothing more than a fleeting speck, barely noticeable among the ancient civilizations that had roamed the stars for eons. These elder races, advanced and powerful, had watched Earth for centuries, amused by the human species' growth, but never threatened by it. To them, humans were just a curious experiment, a species that had yet to earn its place among the stars. Their technology was primitive, their social structures fragile, and their aggression limited to their own world. But what the aliens didn't understand was that the human spirit was unlike any other in the galaxy. Lieutenant Sarah Thompson, captain of the Endeavour, a small but capable exploration ship, had seen this firsthand. As the ship drifted through uncharted space, she couldn't help but wonder if this new mission was any different from the ones before it. Humanity was still in its infancy compared to the other races that roamed the stars, but the humans aboard this ship were more than just explorers. They were survivors. They had survived wars, famine, and disasters. They had faced challenges no other species had ever seen, and they had always risen to the occasion. But in this galaxy, where the old races ruled, they were still seen as children in a dangerous playground. Today, however, the humans were about to learn just how much the universe underestimated them. Sarah sat in the command chair, eyes scanning the vast expanse of space on the ship's view screen. The Endeavour had received a routine message about an alien fleet passing through a nearby system, and they had been ordered to investigate. At first, everything seemed calm, as usual. The fleet, a massive collection of ships that seemed to shimmer with an almost ethereal glow, appeared harmless from a distance. They were just another race on a journey, perhaps passing through, nothing to worry about. But as they approached, the ship's sensors began picking up strange readings. Unusual signals filled the airwaves, and something felt off, like a trap waiting to be sprung. "Captain, we got a problem," the ship's engineer, Lieutenant James Hayes, called out from his station. "I'm reading several unidentified vessels emerging from the fleet. They're surrounding us." Sarah's grip tightened on the armrest of her chair. She had been in tight spots before, but this felt different. The feeling in her gut told her that this wasn't just another space encounter. This was something more. Her fingers danced across the console, activating the communication system. A cold voice filled the room. "This is Commander Vaxor of the Dragon Alliance. You are trespassing in our space, human. Stand down immediately, or we will engage." Sarah leaned forward, meeting the challenge with the calm that only experience could bring. "We're just passing through. We mean no harm. We'll leave immediately. Just tell your fleet to stand down." The Dragon Alliance, a race of towering, reptilian beings, had a reputation throughout the galaxy. Their military power was unmatched, and their disdain for other species was well documented. Sarah knew that any response to them had to be careful. The Dragon had been known to wipe out entire civilizations without a second thought. "Your presence here is an insult." The voice on the other end snapped. "We don't care what you meant. You are weak, human. Weak in technology. Weak in strength. This is a reminder. Leave now, or we will show you what happens to those who defy the Dragon." A chill ran through the crew. Sarah's mind raced, but outwardly, she maintained her composure. She had faced difficult decisions before, but this situation was different. She glanced at her crew, seeing the worry in their eyes. They weren't prepared for a fight against a superior enemy, but she wasn't about to back down. The Dragon wanted a reaction, and she wasn't going to give it to them. Yet. "We'll leave, but we request permission to go in peace," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "We don't want trouble. We're just passing through, as we said." For a moment, there was silence. The Dragon commander seemed to consider her words, but then the response came, sharp and condescending. "You should have known better, human. You have no place here. Leave or prepare to face the consequences." The communication cut off abruptly, and Sarah stared at the empty screen. The crew was silent, knowing that the situation had just escalated. They weren't being allowed to leave. They were being forced to face the wrath of an entire fleet. Sarah's mind raced. There had to be a way out. They couldn't win in a direct confrontation. They were too outmatched. But as she sat there, thinking, she felt something stir inside her, a deep, unshakable irritation. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't just another bad encounter. This was arrogance. They were being mocked, belittled, and now she was getting tired of it. Her patience, always steady in the face of danger, was beginning to wear thin. "I'm actually getting annoyed," Sarah muttered under her breath, more to herself than anyone else. The words barely left her lips before something strange happened. The ship's systems, which had been functioning perfectly up until now, began to hum with an unexpected energy. The air in the room seemed to thicken, as though the universe itself had heard her words. The crew felt it too, a sense of change, an unfamiliar pressure building around them. It wasn't just her irritation. It was something else, something hidden deep inside of her that was beginning to stir. "Captain," Hayes said, his voice trembling. "The ship, it's reacting. We're—" Before he could finish, the lights on the ship flickered, and the energy readings spiked dramatically. The entire ship seemed to vibrate, as though it had been awakened from a long slumber. Something ancient and powerful had been triggered. Sarah didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. They were no longer in control of the situation. She had triggered something, but she didn't yet understand what. The Dragon fleet, unaware of the storm that was brewing, had no idea that they had just awakened a force far greater than anything they could have anticipated. In that moment, as Sarah stared at the console, she realized that the universe had just made a grave mistake. Humans were not weak. They were not insignificant. And when pushed far enough, humans didn't just fight back. They fought back with something that no one, not even the most powerful species in the galaxy, could predict. They fought with something that could break the very fabric of space and time itself. The Dragon had underestimated humanity, and soon they would realize their mistake. But by then, it might be too late. Sarah stood up, her resolve hardened. The game had changed, and the humans were no longer the prey. They had become the hunters. The air on the Endeavor was thick with tension as the ship vibrated violently. Lieutenant Sarah Thompson stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the flashing monitors before her. Something deep within her, something primal and raw, had been awakened. She felt it coursing through her veins, an energy she couldn't quite understand but knew was powerful. Her crew was on edge, their fear palpable, but Sarah knew they couldn't back down now. The Dragon fleet was closing in, and the situation was about to explode. "Captain," Lieutenant Hayes said, his voice shaking as he gripped the control panel. "The power surge is off the charts. Whatever you triggered, it's affecting every system. We're not just running on our own power anymore." Sarah's heart raced. She didn't know what had happened. The moment she muttered, "I'm actually getting annoyed," something inside her had shifted. And now, the Endeavor seemed alive, pulsing with energy, as if it had tapped into something ancient, something beyond the ship's original design. The energy was too overwhelming, and it made her uneasy. She had to regain control, or the ship would tear itself apart. "Get the stabilizers back online now, James," she barked, trying to keep her voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around her. "We need to regain control before we burn out." But Hayes didn't respond immediately. He was too focused on the screens in front of him, his eyes wide in disbelief. "Captain, you need to see this," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah turned toward him, her eyes narrowing as she approached the engineering console. A strange energy field surrounded the ship, radiating in concentric rings. It wasn't just any power surge. It was something more, something alien. The ship was literally surrounded by an invisible wall of force, pushing back against the Dragon fleet that had been preparing to surround them. "We're surrounded by something. But it's not coming from the Dragon fleet," Hayes continued, his voice trembling. "It's coming from us. From the Endeavor." Sarah's stomach twisted. She knew they had activated something, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. How could a simple muttered sentence trigger such a response? She had no idea, but she knew one thing for sure. The Dragon fleet was still closing in, unaware that they had just been caught in the human-made trap. But how long would it hold? The Dragon were powerful. They wouldn't be easy to fool. "Open a comm channel to the Dragon fleet," Sarah ordered. Her voice was steady, but inside, her mind raced. The communication channel flickered to life, and the cold voice of Commander Vaxar filled the room once again. "You dare resist, humans. We gave you a chance. Now you will face the consequences. Prepare to be obliterated." The silence that followed the chaotic clash felt strange. The Dragon fleet, once formidable and overwhelming, was now in disarray. Ships drifted aimlessly through space, some with critical damage, others simply disabled by the unexplainable force they had just encountered. Lieutenant Sarah Thompson stood at the command center, her hands still gripping the console, her heart still racing. She had just led her crew through something unimaginable, a battle they had no business winning, against an enemy far superior in every way. Yet, somehow, they had succeeded. "Captain," Hayes said, his voice slightly breathless with awe. "The fleet is retreating. They're pulling back. They're afraid." Sarah's mind was still trying to process what had just happened. The energy surge, the way the Endeavor had moved almost as if it was part of her, was beyond anything she had ever experienced. But now wasn't the time to dwell on it. The Dragon weren't gone. They were regrouping, and Sarah knew they wouldn't stay down for long. This was just the beginning. "We can't let our guard down," she said, her voice steady but hard. "They'll be back, and when they come, we need to be ready. Let's make sure the Endeavor is fully operational and keep an eye on their fleet." As the crew scrambled to check systems and repair damage, Sarah's mind kept racing back to the energy that had coursed through the ship. It hadn't just been some random fluke. Something had happened when she said those words. "I'm actually getting annoyed." It had awakened something in the ship, something ancient and powerful. But what was it? Was it just a glitch in their technology? Or was it something more? A hidden force within humanity, waiting to be unlocked. "Captain," Hayes interrupted her thoughts. "I'm reading something strange. It's not a weapon. It's not a system failure. There's something alive in the ship's core." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Alive? What do you mean?" Hayes turned to her, his face pale. "The energy readings, they're not just random. It's like something is guiding the ship. It's like it's responding to us, to you. It's almost as if it's aware." Sarah's pulse quickened. If the ship's core was alive, if it was responding to them, then that meant they weren't dealing with ordinary technology. They were dealing with something else entirely. But that was impossible, wasn't it? She shook her head, trying to focus. The immediate danger wasn't the ship. It was the Dragon, and they were far from finished. The sound of the communication system flaring to life interrupted her thoughts. The voice of Commander Vaxar came through, but it was different this time. It was filled with fury, yet tinged with fear. "Human," Vaxar's voice growled through the comm. "You have made a grave mistake. You are not beyond us. We will not forget this humiliation. The Dragon will hunt you down. We will destroy you." Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. There was no turning back now. The Dragon had made it personal. And now, the stakes were higher than ever. "We don't fear you, Vaxar," she responded, her voice cutting through the tension. "You're the ones who should be afraid. You're the ones who made the mistake of underestimating humanity. And you're going to regret that." The communication ended abruptly. Sarah turned to her crew, their faces filled with a mix of fear and anticipation. They had just done the impossible, but they weren't out of danger yet. The Dragon were no longer just a threat to their survival. They were an existential threat to humanity as a whole. And the Endeavor had just made itself a target. "Prepare the ship for long-range travel," Sarah ordered, her voice commanding. "We're going to the closest allied system. If the Dragon want a war, they've got one." As the crew worked, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something beyond the ship, beyond even the Dragon. The energy that had flooded the Endeavor seemed to hum in the background, almost like it was waiting for something. She didn't understand it, but she had learned one thing. This wasn't just about space battles and survival anymore. This was about humanity's place in the galaxy, and the Endeavor was their message. She walked to the viewport, her eyes scanning the stars as they moved further from the Dragon fleet. The Endeavor was still pulsing with energy, as though it had its own will. As Sarah watched the lights of distant stars twinkle, a thought crossed her mind. Was this the beginning of something much bigger? Was this energy, this force within the ship, a sign that humanity had tapped into something they didn't understand, something that had been dormant for eons? Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and alarms blared through the corridors. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as the entire crew scrambled into action. "Captain, it's the Dragon fleet," Hayes shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "They've recalculated their course. They're not retreating. They're following us." The Endeavor's view screen flickered to life, and Sarah saw the Dragon fleet closing in. This time, there were more ships, many more. Their weapons were charged, and their determination was clear. They were coming for humanity, for the Endeavor, and for everything it stood for. The ship's hum grew louder as the strange energy in its core surged again. It was as if the Endeavor itself was responding to the threat, preparing for the battle ahead. The power that had awakened was now growing stronger, building, almost as if it was hungry for a fight. "Captain," Hayes said, his voice tight, "whatever this energy is, it's getting stronger. And it's acting like it's connected to you." Sarah turned to face him, her mind racing. "What do you mean connected?" "I don't know how to explain it," he replied, his eyes wide. "But whatever it is, it's reacting to you, Captain. Every time you make a decision, it seems to respond. It's like the ship is alive with you. It's working with us now." Sarah felt the weight of his words, and in that moment, she realized something. The Endeavor wasn't just an advanced human ship anymore. It was more. And whatever force was guiding them, whatever power had been awakened, had bonded with humanity. The Dragon were about to learn that their most dangerous mistake wasn't just underestimating humans. It was underestimating what humanity could become. The Endeavor moved into position, the strange energy humming with more intensity than ever before. The Dragon fleet was getting closer, and the time for answers was running out. Humanity had already shown what they were capable of. Now they would show the galaxy what they would do to protect their future. The battle for the stars had just begun. The aftermath of the battle was a quiet that seemed to stretch for eternity. The Endeavor drifted through space, its engines humming with a steady rhythm, the chaos of the fight still echoing in the minds of its crew. The Dragon fleet was broken, their once formidable ships scattered or disabled. The lead flagship had been reduced to debris, a once proud symbol of their power, now nothing more than space dust. Sarah Thompson stood alone in the command center, staring out at the wreckage. The stars seemed peaceful, distant, as if the battle had never taken place. The Endeavor had won, but at what cost? The energy that had awakened in the ship was still pulsing, still present, and the sensation of being connected to it, as though it were an extension of her own will, was growing stronger. She could feel it in her bones now, an undercurrent of power that made her question what she had unleashed. What was this force? What had humanity truly awakened? "Captain," Hayes's voice cut through the silence, a note of caution in his tone. "The Dragon aren't just retreating. We've intercepted communications from their remaining ships. They're calling for reinforcements, big reinforcements. This fight isn't over." Sarah turned to him, her gaze sharp but focused. "How many?" "Far too many," Hayes replied grimly. "A massive armada is on its way, bigger, better equipped, and with more firepower than anything we faced so far. They're making it clear that this was just the beginning of their response. Sarah's heart sank. She had known this would happen. The Dragon wouldn't just lick their wounds and go home. They were relentless. They would come back with everything they had. But there was something else, something that nagged at the back of her mind. The Endeavor wasn't like it was before. The ship had changed, and it was as though it had become something more, something alive, even. Is the ship still? She trailed off, unsure how to ask the question. She didn't even know how to explain what she was feeling. The energy levels are higher than ever, Hayes said, turning toward her. It's almost like the ship's core is aware. It's responding to the threat, Captain. I can't even explain it, but it's like we're part of the same entity now. Sarah nodded slowly. She'd felt it. It was like the ship had a mind of its own, one that was tied to her, to humanity. She could feel its pulse in her chest, a steady rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. The ship was no longer just a machine. It was a living, breathing force, and it seemed to be getting stronger with each passing moment. We have to be ready, Sarah said, her voice tight with determination. The Dragon aren't going to give up, and neither are we. I don't know what's happening with the Endeavor, but whatever it is, we're going to use it. As she spoke, she could feel the ship respond to her words, as though it understood what she was saying. The energy within the core seemed to pulse in time with her thoughts, growing stronger, more concentrated. It was no longer just about survival. It was about something more, something bigger than anything she had ever imagined. The crew worked tirelessly, preparing the Endeavor for what was to come. The ship's systems were running at maximum capacity, and the once unpredictable energy surges had become a steady, powerful force that seemed to respond to the crew's every command. Sarah could feel it too. The bond between her and the ship was undeniable. It was as if the Endeavor had become an extension of her own body, of her own will. But even with the ship's newfound strength, Sarah knew they couldn't face the Dragon reinforcements alone. They needed help, other human fleets, allies they had made during their travels. They needed to warn the rest of humanity, to unite them before the Dragon came in full force. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would have to prove that they were no longer the underdogs. They had awakened something in themselves that could not be ignored. Captain, Hayes said again, his voice cutting through her thoughts. We've just received a transmission from the nearest Allied fleet. They're coming to assist us, but they're not sure they can reach us in time. How long do we have? Sarah asked. At least 30 hours, maybe less, Hayes replied. We'll be on our own until then. Sarah clenched her fists. 30 hours wasn't enough time. The Dragon would be here long before then. The Endeavor was strong, but it wasn't invincible. The energy within the ship was growing, but they needed a strategy. They needed to strike first. If they could hit the Dragon fleet while it was still on the way, they might have a chance of catching them off guard. We're not waiting for them, Sarah said, her voice filled with authority. We'll go to them. We'll take the fight to the heart of their armada. What do you mean? Hayes asked, his brow furrowing. We have something they don't, Sarah said, turning to face him. We have the Endeavor. We have this energy, whatever it is. We've only scratched the surface of what it can do. We're going to use it. Hayes stared at her for a long moment before nodding. A bold move. But if it works, it might just give us the edge we need. Sarah turned to the tactical display, her mind racing. They couldn't afford to wait. The Dragon would strike without mercy, and they needed to hit back, hard. The energy in the Endeavor's core was ready. They would channel it, unleash it in a way they never had before. If the Dragon wanted a fight, they were going to get a fight they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Set a course for the Dragon Armada, Sarah said, her voice low and steady, and get ready to unleash everything we have. The Endeavor powered up, its core glowing with an intensity that shook the ship. The energy from the heart of the vessel hummed, and Sarah could feel it pulsing beneath her feet. It was no longer just a ship, it was a weapon. And with that weapon, humanity was about to send a message across the stars. The Dragon might have thought they were invincible, but they were about to learn something the hard way. Humanity was no longer afraid. They were ready to fight back, and they would win. The Endeavour surged forward into the vast emptiness of space, the once distant stars now streaking past as the ship reached unimaginable speeds. Lieutenant Sarah Thompson stood at the helm, her hands gripping the control panel, her mind focused solely on the task ahead. Her heart was pounding, but her resolve was firm. The Dragon were coming, and they were about to make the mistake of underestimating humanity once again. "Captain," Hayes's voice broke through the tense silence in the command center. "The Dragon fleet is closing in on our location. They're not slowing down. We don't have much time." Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the view screen as she watched the Dragon ships grow larger. Their fleet was vast, an imposing armada that looked ready to crush anything in its path. But she wasn't intimidated. The Endeavour was no longer just a human ship. It was something more, something powerful. She could feel it deep within her bones, the connection between herself and the ship stronger than ever before. The energy that had been awakened was no longer something she merely commanded. It was something she was part of. "We're going in," Sarah said, her voice steady, her eyes narrowed. "All systems are green, right?" "All systems online," Hayes confirmed. "And the energy?" He paused, staring at his console with wide eyes. "It's spiking again. We've never seen readings like this before. It's like the ship is preparing for something massive." Sarah nodded, a determined look crossing her face. "Let's give them something massive." The Endeavour's engines roared to life as the ship hurtled toward the Dragon fleet, its core glowing with a fierce, blinding light. The energy field surrounding the ship crackled with power, the force that had once been a mystery now a force of destruction. It was as if the ship itself was anticipating the battle, eager to unleash everything it had. And this time, Sarah was ready to let it. "Activate the weapons systems," Sarah commanded. "Let's show them what humanity can do." Her crew responded immediately, pulling up the tactical displays and preparing for the imminent clash. The Dragon ships were relentless, but the Endeavour had something they didn't, a power they couldn't even begin to comprehend. As the Endeavour neared the Dragon fleet, the ship's energy field surged outward, pushing back the incoming blasts. The first wave of Dragon fire hit the field, only to be deflected harmlessly into space. It was like the Endeavour had become a living shield, absorbing the blows and returning them with even greater force. "Captain," Hayes shouted, his voice filled with astonishment. "The energy, it's responding to us. It's amplifying our attacks. We're able to fight back like we never could before." Sarah felt the surge of energy flood through her. It wasn't just the ship. It was her too. Every command she gave, every thought she had, seemed to be amplified by the ship's power. The bond between them was unbreakable. She felt the pulse of the ship's core as if it were her own heartbeat, and in that moment, Sarah knew they had the upper hand. "Release the energy cannon," she ordered, her voice fierce and confident. The Endeavour's core flared, releasing a beam of energy that ripped through space with blinding speed. The Dragon ships in its path were obliterated in an instant. It was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a weapon powered by the very force that had once only been a mystery. And now it was their greatest asset. The Dragon fleet seemed to hesitate for the first time. They regrouped, their ships trying to evade the unrelenting power of the Endeavour. But it was too late. The ship moved like a predator, its energy surging with every strike, each wave of fire stronger than the last. The Dragon were no longer fighting just a ship. They were fighting a force beyond their comprehension, a force that was deeply connected to humanity itself. Sarah watched as the Dragon fleet began to break apart. Their ships were being torn apart by the Endeavour's firepower, their once mighty armada now disintegrating before her eyes. The energy within the ship seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment, as if feeding on the battle, growing more powerful the longer it fought. "Captain," Hayes said, his voice barely audible over the din of alarms. "The Dragon flagship, it's retreating. They're pulling back." Sarah could hardly believe her ears. The Dragon, were retreating. The power that had surged through the Endeavor had done what humanity had thought impossible. It had turned the tide of the battle, not just with weapons, but with sheer force of will. "Don't let them escape," Sarah ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We end this now." The Endeavor surged forward, pushing the limits of its newfound power. The flagship of the Dragon fleet was within reach, and Sarah wasn't going to let them escape. The ship's energy field crackled with violent intensity as the core released another blast, a direct hit to the Dragon flagship's shields. The ship shuddered as the blast tore through its defenses, weakening its hull. With a final surge of power, the Endeavor unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one more devastating than the last. The Dragon flagship could no longer withstand the force. The shields failed, and the ship exploded in a burst of light, the remnants of its once immense power scattering across the stars. Sarah felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, but it was quickly replaced by a deep sense of triumph. The Dragon had been defeated, humiliated, but the cost had been high. They had unlocked something ancient, something powerful within themselves, and now the universe would never be the same. "Is it over?" Hayes asked, his voice quiet, almost in disbelief. Sarah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked out into the vastness of space, the wreckage of the Dragon fleet now drifting in the distance. For the first time since the battle began, there was silence. The Endeavor's core hummed softly beneath her feet, the energy that had once been a mystery now calm, contained. The bond between the ship and humanity was stronger than ever, but Sarah knew they had just begun to scratch the surface of what lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, and the Dragon were only one threat. But humanity had proven something today. They were not helpless. They were not the prey. They were the hunters. And the stars, whether the Dragon liked it or not, were theirs to protect. Sarah took a deep breath and turned to her crew. "We've won today. But this is just the beginning." The war for the galaxy had only just begun, but humanity was ready. Ready to fight, ready to rise, ready to show the universe that when humans say, "We're getting annoyed," they should be very, very afraid. And the galaxy would never forget that lesson.